In the twilight of the 41st millennium, the stars of the Imperium burned like dying embers in a black sea. Holy Terra, cradle of mankind, the heart of faith, and the light of the Astronomican still shone across the void, but even its radiance had begun to flicker. For 10,000 years, the corpse of the Emperor had endured upon the golden throne, his will a lighthouse for humanity in a sea of nightmares. But every light must dim, and every god must bleed. For decades, the signs had whispered doom. Astropaths screamed in unison, their eyes burned to ash by unseen storms. The Adeptus Mechanicus of Mars reported impossible fluxes in the Noctis Aeterna, and even the Custodies, those golden giants who had never known fear, stood longer in prayer before the Eternity Gate. Terra was trembling, not from war or invasion, but from the slow unraveling of its soul. Then, in a single, impossible moment, the Astronomican died. Across the galaxy, ships were swallowed by the dark. Fleets vanished mid-warp. Entire sectors went silent as night fell upon 1 billion worlds. And in that instant, the Imperium, the greatest empire ever forged by man, ceased to be one. Mankind was scattered, blind and alone, each planet now a desperate island adrift in a sea of madness. On Terra, the silence was absolute. The golden throne groaned like a dying god machine. The Emperor's light dimmed to a whisper, and the Custodies fell to their knees as the chamber darkened. The Mechanicum priests chanted in binary tongues, praying to circuits that sparked and died in their hands. The High Lords argued, begged, and murdered each other in fear. And through the shattered stained glass of the Imperial Palace, the sky bled red. The first invasion came not from without, but from within. Warp storms tore open in the void above Luna. Demons spilled like fire across the void, drawn to the scent of a dying god. The Grey Knights and Sisters of Silence fought to contain the tide, but the warp had already tasted blood. The siege of Terra began again, not as a war for the Emperor's palace, but as a war for his corpse. Millions died before the first hour ended. The Custodes fought in silent fury, their golden blades cutting through nightmares made flesh. The Imperial fists stood shoulder to shoulder upon the walls of the palace, firing until their ammunition turned to steam. The Mechanicus unleashed ancient war constructs, god machines from the dark age of technology long hidden beneath the crust. Yet all their might could not halt the inevitable. The warp was no longer a wound upon reality. It was reality. As demonic legions reigned upon the throne world, the ecclesiarchy cried out across the Vox, urging the faithful to pray, to kneel, to beg the Emperor to rise. But there was no answer. The throne no longer hummed. Its pylons cracked and bled golden light, and the golden figure within it, once man, now myth, sat silent as stone. Across the galaxy, humanity panicked. Worlds that had worshipped Terra as the center of existence now turned upon themselves. Civil wars erupted on shrine worlds. The Ministorum burned its own cathedrals. The Inquisition declared exterminatus on dozens of planets, believing heresy had doomed the Astronomican. But it was not heresy. It was entropy. It was the natural death of divinity. In the void beyond Sul, the fleets of chaos gathered. The eye of terror pulsed brighter than ever before, vomiting forth gods and their champions. Abaddon smiled upon his flagship, his armor glowing like the heart of a dying star. For 10,000 years he had fought to reach Terra. Now Terra itself had come undone. He did not need to march upon its gates. The gates had fallen inward. The corrupted legions swarmed through the void and the loyal defenders met them in orbits turned to fire. The battle for Luna raged for 9 days. The moon shattered into molten fragments. The Astra Militarum bled its last regiments in orbit. The Adeptus Astartes of the Ultramarines, the Blood Angels, and even the shattered remnants of the Imperial Fists made their final stand above the burning blue sphere that had once been the heart of mankind. And then, from the depths of the warp, came something older than chaos itself. A hunger that had waited for the light to fade. The Tyranids arrived. The Tyranid fleets entered the Sol system like a tide of living death. Great bioships blotted out the stars, their tendrils feeding upon the very psychic storm that consumed the Astronomican's corpse. They did not come for conquest or vengeance. They came to feast upon the carcass of a god. The shadow in the warp deepened until even the demons began to fade, their forms breaking apart under the devouring hunger of the great devourer. For a brief moment, chaos and order, demon and man, shared a common terror. The warp itself screamed. The hive mind had no soul, no emotion, no worship. It was a void that consumed even madness. As it closed upon Terra, the Imperium shuddered and bled. Demons fled back into the storm, and the Custodes saw, for the first time in eternity, demons dying not by blade or bolter, but by starvation. Above the burning atmosphere, the Tyranid tendrils pierced orbit. Bio-titans and spore ships rained down through the broken shields of the Imperial Palace. Millions of spores fell upon the ruined cities, birthing monstrous swarms that devoured everything they touched. Stone, steel, bone, memory. The ecclesiarchal spires collapsed beneath waves of living flesh. Statues of saints vanished beneath crawling seas of chitin and acid. And yet, Terra did not fall quietly. The Adeptus Custodes, the Sisters of Silence, the last of the Grey Knights, and 1,000 fragments of dying legions stood in a final circle around the palace of the Emperor. Their oaths bound them tighter than faith. They knew they could not win. They only fought to make the end worthy of his name. The Custodes' captain, Alakon Ven, led the defense of the Eternity Gate. His armor was cracked, his spear glowing with fading light. Around him, the final walls of gold and marble burned, turning the sky crimson. He did not shout. He did not command. He simply walked forward into the storm. The hive tyrants came in waves, each greater than the last. The Custodes fought like angels in the apocalypse, their blades cutting through beasts the size of titans. But for every monster slain, 10 more rose. The Sisters of Silence unleashed null fields that tore apart the psychic web of the swarm, and for a heartbeat, the hive mind recoiled. It was then that Alakon Ven looked toward the golden throne and whispered the last prayer of the Imperium. Father of mankind, forgive us our failure. Inside the throne room, the golden throne was breaking. The Emperor's withered form pulsed with dying light as the warp storms outside roared louder. The Mechanicum priests screamed binary hymns as they sacrificed themselves to keep the circuits alive. The room smelled of burning ozone and sanctified blood. And then, silence. The light of the Emperor flickered once, twice, and went out. Across the galaxy, psychers exploded in agony. Ships vanished. Warp routes collapsed. The Imperium was finally blind. And then something moved, something vast and cold and silent within the dead shell of the golden throne. It was not the Emperor who rose. It was his shadow. A presence that had been dormant for millennia stirred in the corpse of the God Emperor. It was the echo of his will, stripped of humanity and reason, a psychic remnant forged from 10,000 years of suffering and worship. The echo of the throne. It had no voice, no mercy, and no purpose but one: to destroy everything that had defiled his dream. The shadow of the Emperor unleashed a psychic storm that tore Terra apart. The Tyranids burned by the millions. Demons dissolved into raw warp fire. The very air became judgment. The custodies fell to their knees as their golden armor melted under the weight of divine wrath. The echo did not distinguish between friend or foe. All life upon Terra was judged and found wanting. Orbiting fleets recorded only silence and light, a column of golden fire rising from the surface of Terra that pierced the void itself. For one brief moment, the entire galaxy saw the light of mankind's cradle blaze brighter than any sun. Then it was gone. Terra ceased to exist. The system itself was reduced to dust. But the light did not die entirely. In its wake, fragments of the Emperor's psychic essence scattered through the warp, like shards of broken glass reflecting a god's last thought. Some shards found hosts, lost saints, psychers, even dying Astartes, who awoke changed, carrying fragments of divinity in their minds. They would become known in whispered myth as the children of the last light. Across the shattered Imperium, these beings rose in scattered worlds, each carrying a spark of the Emperor's last will. Some healed the dying. Others burned entire planets with a gesture. None remembered their origin, but all were haunted by the same dream, a vision of a dying world and a throne of light consumed by darkness. Humanity did not vanish. It endured, broken but alive. The Inquisition, scattered and leaderless, began to gather these children, believing them to be tools of resurrection. The surviving Astartes chapters swore new oaths, no longer to Terra, but to the memory of mankind itself. In the ashes of the old Imperium, a new faith began to grow. Not worship of a god, but reverence for the idea that man could rise again. But chaos had not vanished. The death of Terra had wounded the warp, but it had not slain the gods. Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh laughed as they feasted upon the psychic afterbirth of a dying god. They saw opportunity where mortals saw despair. And from the ruins of the Eye of Terror, Abaddon the Despoiler forged a new war. One not of conquest, but of ascension. He would no longer seek to destroy the Imperium. He would rebuild it in the image of chaos. The Age of Holy Ashes had begun. Centuries passed in silence after the death of Terra. The galaxy had become a graveyard of stars. Warp storms twisted the void into endless maelstroms, cutting off what little remained of human civilization. The Astronomican was gone, and with it, the voice that had guided mankind through the ages. Planets drifted in isolation, their skies haunted by auroras of dying light. Yet amidst ruin, humanity endured. On the world of Arx Calorum, once a forgotten mining colony at the edge of Segmentum Pacificus, a light was born anew. Beneath its blood-red skies, a child was found among the ruins of a crashed pilgrim ship. The infant glowed faintly, wrapped in cloth burned by holy fire. The monks of the world's last chapel named him Solon, meaning he who rises. From the moment of his birth, strange phenomena followed. Machines long dead flickered to life at his touch. Wounded soldiers healed simply by his presence. When he wept, the air shimmered with golden dust. The monks whispered that he was one of the children of the last light, a vessel of the Emperor's shattered soul. But Solon was different. His power did not burn like a weapon. It felt like warmth, like hope. As he grew, word of him spread beyond the broken stars. Across fragmented systems, fragments of the Imperium heard rumors of a child who could calm the warp, who could silence demons simply by existing. The Inquisition, fractured but still ruthless, declared him a heresy to be contained. The remnants of the Adeptus Astartes, scattered brotherhoods of warriors without purpose, began to dream the same dream, of a golden dawn rising over a world of ashes. And so, humanity began to move again. Fleet by fleet, relic by relic, remnants of mankind gathered around Arx Calorum. The surviving fleets of Ultramar, battered and reduced to hundreds, came from the east. The Sisters of Battle, scarred but unbroken, came from shrine worlds swallowed by night. Even the ancient Titans of Mars, driven by half-mad tech priests, crossed the void in pilgrimage. They came not for conquest, but for something long forgotten: faith. When Solon turned 33, the sky above Arx Calorum opened. A warp rift, vast and crimson, tore reality apart above the planet's orbit. From it emerged the armies of Abaddon, no longer mortal, no longer bound by flesh. The War Master had ascended, his form a monstrous fusion of god and demon, his eyes burning with the fire of 4 dark gods. Behind him came legions of the damned, Black Legion warriors, demon engines, warp-born titans, descending like a storm of nightmares. Abaddon had not come to destroy Solon. He had come to claim him. For even the gods of chaos feared the possibility that the Emperor's soul could be reborn. If Solon became whole, if humanity once again united beneath light, the endless feast of the warp would end. Chaos would starve. Eternity itself would burn away. The war that followed was unlike any in history. It was called the Battle of the Last Dawn. The surviving Astartes fought like ancient demigods, veterans of 1,000 crusades, warriors who had seen their chapters die one by one, now stood together as brothers of a single cause. The Custodes who had escaped Terra returned, their golden armor scarred and dim. The Sisters of Battle sang hymns of fire as they marched into the storm. Even mortal soldiers, unarmored and unaugmented, took up laser guns and relic blades to stand before the gates of the sanctuary that held Solon. Abaddon's legions fell upon them like a flood. Demons screamed across the sky. The warp twisted into rivers of blood and flame. Titans clashed with god engines of chaos, shaking the ground to its core. For 7 days and nights, the battle raged without pause. The surface of Arx Calorum turned to molten glass. Mountains broke. Oceans boiled. Yet still, humanity refused to yield. In the final hours of the battle, as the last bastions fell and the sanctuary of the last light burned, Solon stepped into the open air. He was not armored, nor crowned. He wore simple white robes torn by ash and flame. His eyes burned like miniature suns. Around him, the warp recoiled, not from hate, but from sorrow. The demons that saw him began to scream and dissolve, their essence erased by the memory of a purity they could not endure. Abaddon descended from the rift, his black armor gleaming with the power of 4 gods. Each step he took cracked the ground. He looked upon Solon and saw not a man, but the echo of the Emperor that had defied him for 10 millennia. So it ends. The War Master growled, his voice echoing like thunder through the storm. Your father's dream dies here. There is no salvation, only eternity. Solon looked up, his expression calm. Eternity is not yours to claim. The two collided like colliding stars. Light and shadow tore the sky apart. The world screamed. Abaddon's blade, Draconian, struck against Solon's hand, shattering into 1,000 shards. The gods roared through him, pouring all their power into their champion. But for the first time, their voices faltered. Solon's light spread, burning through the warp, unraveling the web of madness that had bound reality for so long. All across the galaxy, Psychers felt it, a warmth they had forgotten. The warp storms began to calm. The eye of terror began to shrink. The gods of chaos howled as their essence was pulled back into the void. Abaddon fell to his knees, his armor melting into slag. His body, once immortal, now turned to ash. Before his form dissolved, he looked upon Solon and whispered, "You are not him." Solon smiled faintly. "No, I am what he wished us to become." And then, with one final burst of radiance, he opened his arms and unleashed the last fragment of the Emperor's soul. The warp imploded. For a heartbeat, the galaxy was pure light. Then silence. When the light faded, Arx Calorum was gone. In its place floated a calm sphere of golden dust, a new star where none had existed before. Ships emerging from the warp saw its light and wept. Across the void, ancient warp routes reconnected. Lost fleets found their way home. Planets long isolated saw the dawn rise again for the first time in centuries. And within the hearts of men and women across the galaxy, something stirred. Not worship, not fear, but memory. The name of the Emperor was still spoken, but now not as a god, nor as a corpse. He was remembered as what he truly was, the dream of mankind's potential. The new Imperium that rose from that light was not built upon faith or tyranny. It was a brotherhood of survivors bound by one truth, that even in the darkest age, the light of humanity can never truly die. The Inquisition, reformed under new purpose, became guardians of balance. The surviving Astartes became wanderers, protectors of the frontier, no longer lords of worlds, but shepherds of hope. The Adeptus Mechanicus turned their gaze not toward relics, but toward creation once more, rediscovering the ancient sciences they had long buried in superstition. And somewhere, beyond the edge of known space, a figure stood upon the bridge of a nameless ship. His hair was silver, his eyes golden. He looked upon the stars and smiled faintly, as if remembering a dream long past. Behind him, a faint voice, neither divine nor mortal, whispered through the void, "Mankind endures." The ship turned toward the horizon and vanished into the starlight. Centuries later, historians of the reborn Imperium would look back upon the age of holy ashes and debate endlessly. Did the Emperor truly die that day? Was Solon his rebirth, or only a reflection of human faith given form? No one could say for certain, but all agreed upon one thing. When Holy Terra was lost, humanity was reborn. Not through gods, not through war, but through the simple, immortal truth that in every heart lies a spark of the Emperor's light. And as long as one human lives to dream, that light will never fade.